Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. Sunderer back with the tier list for patch 3.1, and I haven't been releasing content for some time, but I have like 4 videos at least lined up, and you guys will see what that is in the coming days. But I thought that releasing a tier list first would be the most apt, because we can get a read on what the meta is like. Now of course the tier list is my opinion, and I've ordered them from S plus to C tier, from left to right. So the meta has changed quite a lot, especially with the nerf to Solari Chargeblade for the ADCs, the addition of Sunderer and Hullbreaker for especially top laners, and the revamped Dance as well. So the meta has shifted quite a bit. So we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to cover it as fast as possible, but also cover everything that I need to, so as to not make the video too long, hopefully. So first thing I will say is that I think that at the current moment in time, Divine Sunderer is a little bit overrated because it is a new item. So a lot of people are just spamming Divine Sunderer on a lot of champions. But what I will say is that most champions who can build Sunderer can also build Triforce because of the Spellblade passive. And generally every game it should be a choice between the two, because Triforce gives you more movement speed and more attack speed, whereas Sunderer gives you more tank shred and more sustain. So for example, someone like a Jax or a Tryndamere, not sure what that bell was in the background, not sure if you guys heard that, but basically Jax and Tryndamere I feel are people who would do better with Triforce, and like someone like a Fiora might want Triforce or might want Sunderer depending on the match. So I think it's a case by case basis depending on the match. So anyways, we're gonna quickly get into the Baron lane tier list. So Fiora and Camille both are very great split pushers, but both can team fight as well. Now Fiora not generally a very good team fighter, but just because of how good Fiora the champion is at the moment, she can sort of team fight if you're really good at her. So of course Camille, especially with Sunderer, is very good, and Hullbreaker as well, like split pushing. Same goes with Jax and Tryndamere, who both do really well with like a Triforce and a Hullbreaker, and maybe like a Bork, not necessarily in that order, and just split push the whole game. Darius is there because of the Death Dance revamp, where with Triumph and the new Death Dance, when you get a kill and a ult reset, you can pretty much restore close to half of your health, and if you do that like twice, you can go from like 0 to 100 really quickly. Garen I still think is really tanky, so I still think he should be there. Set and Renekton, they haven't necessarily gotten weaker, just that they're not the best users of like Hullbreaker or Divine Sunderer, in my opinion at least, so I don't think that they're as good now. Riven got a buff on her E, and I always think she's really good, so she's still in the S tier. And we have Wukong, who is a Sunderer user and has a huge teamfight ultimate, so I do think that Wukong is actually really good. AP Gragas can instantly one-shot you if he's a hit or has items, so I do think that AP Gragas has caught on, so I do think AP Gragas really strong. Irelia, after getting the buff on her Q by like 2 seconds cooldown, I think Irelia is really good now, and I think that was a huge nerf, especially not huge nerf, huge buff, especially when it comes to the skill floor of Irelia, because even a not too skilled Irelia player can kind of make Irelia work. Spoiler, Irelia video is coming up where I play Irelia and I completely suck at Irelia, but I still make it work. So Karma I think is a really interesting one, because Karma is not necessarily a top laner, but I do think Karma at the moment is a very strong champion in general, and in top lane she can really work by just poking out people. Like her good matches are those that can't really reach her, maybe not something like a Fiora or a Camille, but I can see her laning very well against like a Darius or a Garen, who can't really get to her really easily. Now Malphite, a little bit unfortunate. I still think he's really good with his teamfight ultimate, but being a tank in the Divine Sunderer meta sort of moves you down a little bit, so I do think that Malphite does have to move down a little bit. Same goes for Shen, who didn't really move down, but sort of like he kind of came in and he's a tank, and not really good time for tanks at the current moment. So don't think Shen is too good at the moment. Like of course his global ult and his taunt is really good, but I really think he's outclassed by a lot of other Baron laners at the moment, because he can't really build Hullbreaker and Divine Sunderer. I mean, I have seen people build Divine Sunderer, but I just don't think it's that good on Shen. Graves I think has always been really good. Same thing with Pantheon and Akali. Mundo and Olaf, two other tanky options who are not too good because of it's a tank meta. Kennen, I don't really like him too much just because his ult seems to do like very, very little damage. And Lucian and Vayne niche picks depending on the counter matchup. Jarvan sort of has the same tank problem, and furthermore with the revamped second win like one patch ago, his poke really doesn't do all that much anymore, and his poke is not as painful as something like a Karma poke, so he really isn't in a good spot now. Kayle, not sure why I have her here. She is definitely the worst Baron laner out of them all. Nasus is pretty interesting because Nasus is still really bad and he still needs to stack up, which opponents shouldn't be allowing you to do. But now with like the new Hullbreaker, with the new Divine Sunderer, and with the new Fimble Winter, if you can actually get to like a point in the game where you have like 3 items and like a couple hundred stacks, like 400 stacks, 500 stacks maybe, you are actually very tanky and just like two-shot people with your Q. So if you can actually get to that point, Nasus can be really strong, but otherwise he really isn't. Yeah, so he still has the same weakness of having a very weak early game, which he will always have. So I think Nasus is pretty much always going to be somewhere near the bottom. In low elo, he's probably like S+ tier, but in like a mid to high elo, he really isn't. So now we're going to move on to talking about the jungle. So here we have the jungle, and now as you guys notice, I'm using the new Mad Labs. Not really that new, but I'm using the Mad Labs tier maker because I wanted to make the tier list from scratch, and I thought why not just give it a try. The only thing I really don't like about it is you can't insert tiers like an A+ tier or like a D tier, for example, so it's kind of a bit more compressed, but hey, that might be a good thing as well. So Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, still the two best junglers, and Fiora up there as well, just because of how overtuned Fiora as a champion is. So no real change in the top of the tier list. But a new addition is Master Yi, who I feel that at this point in time he's really strong with his he can Q. His Q can hit the same target 4 times. Now this achieves 2 things. Firstly, his jungle clear becomes a whole lot faster because he can hit for example a red buff 4 times now. And number 2, 1v1ing Master Yi becomes basically impossible because he can immune your skills by going inside you with his Q and then hit you like 4 times, and which chunks you for like half your health or more. So Master Yi is really strong now for that reason, but the reason why he's not like S+ is the same logic as Katarina, is that he's really strong at the moment, but he's really weak to CC. So the moment you have like 2 point and click CC spells, basically Master Yi can play the game as long as the opponents play correctly. And yeah, besides he's like permabanned at the moment, so you probably won't get your hands on Master Yi anyways. So Graves got that buff to his jungle clear speed on his Q, so I do think he is S+ regardless of whether he got that buff or not, but I do think this moves him up a little bit. Of course, he doesn't build Chargeblade anymore. He now goes for Stormraizer instead, which of course benefits him a whole lot. Evelynn is pretty much your best AP option, so you're pretty much always gonna have an AP option in the S tier, because otherwise, your team may have like no AP at all. Pantheon, I do think jungle is his best role. Of course, really good strong early game to snowball the game. Now Rengar is a pretty interesting one. He of course is still an amazing one-shot assassin, but now he has also like a tanky-ish build with like Sunderer and Death's Dance, sort of where you can go like for a tanky bruiser fighter kind of Rengar, which I have tried it in ARAM and I do think it is pretty good. So I do think that in a PvP it's probably going to be really good as well. Riven I've always thought was good and is still good. Pretty much your best tank option in the jungle is Nunu, although tanks are, not in the best of positions now with the Divine Sunderer, but pretty much your best option is Nunu. Xin Zhao can build Sunderer, and with the buffs on his W, and I forgot which other spell it was that he got buffed on, he is probably hanging out to the bottom of the S tier. Camille, I still think is pretty good as a jungler, but just not as good as the rest. She of course likely will build Sunderer in the jungle as well, but Hullbreaker is not really a thing you build on junglers. Because you got to be in the fight for dragons and barons. You can't really be split pushing when that's going on. Olaf, Xin Zhao, not Xin Zhao, Olaf, Jarvan, Vi, all just pretty solid junglers. AP Gragas also pretty good in the jungle. Now Wukong clear speed is really slow, but he still has that amazing teamfight ultimate, and he does benefit from Sunderer. Jax, not really good in the jungle anymore, just because he's just so good in the Baron lane right now with this new split push kind of meta, where pretty much if you play him in the jungle, he's just not going to be as good, but a lot of people are still doing that because you need to be there for objective fights because you have the smite for your team and you can't be split pushing when that happens. So Jack's really not too good in the jungle now. Now other AP options, Diana and Morgana. Diana's clear speed is just a little bit too slow. Morgana is just a little bit too squishy, which is why they're kind of in the B tier. Mundo is a tank, just doesn't do too well. Rammus only good in niche situations, and Tryndamere same logic as Jax, but he's even worse than Jax. I feel like Jax can at least carry harder than Tryndamere. Amumu, horrible clear speed in early game. Nasus are horrible early game, horrible clear speed. And Shyvana just too reliant on dragons to scale, so if you don't get dragons, you're like only half a champion, and also makes makes you very predictable that you will always go for dragon instead of herald. Alright. So now onto the mid lane. I do actually think Diana is the best mid laner at the moment. Huge teamfight ultimate, a lot of damage, and going for something like a Crystalline Reflector early makes her really tanky as well. Orianna, really solid mid laner with good scaling. Ziggs, we all know what he does. We don't really have to cover Ziggs again. I do think that Irelia is the only new addition to our X Plus tier because I really think that Irelia is really strong. She can 1v1 pretty much any champion in the game. Maybe except for Master Yi, and she can also 1v2 very easily. You guys will see in the video later on, but I really think Irelia is very, very strong now. Zed still in a very solid position despite the nerfs to his E. Now he's just not as obnoxious, but he's still good, especially if you can play him. Galio really good against the AP options like these three and a couple of them down below. So Galio in a pretty solid position. Katarina, in my opinion, always going to be at S tier, not higher or lower, just because you can 1v5, but if there's a lot of CC, you can get locked down. I still think Corki is in a very strong position, despite the Solari Chargeblade nerfs. I still think he built Solari Chargeblade, and I still think he's really strong. Akali, mid lane, obviously a better position than top lane. She's just alright. Same goes for Yasuo, who did get a nerf because of Solari Chargeblade, but got a buff to his Q, which I do think keeps him really strong. Akshan, against a good Akshan, really hard to play your lane, can be very, very oppressive, and he's just really strong in general. Twisted Fate, really good roaming, of course, and pretty solid of a pick in general. And Gragas, as we covered already, AP Gragas is a menace at the moment. Now, Karma in the mid lane, I really don't think is that good, because Karma only really has one damaging spell, which is her Q. Her W and her E are a lot more utility, and her ult, of course, is huge for team fights and is just does a lot of damage in general, but I just don't think Karma is very good AP mid. I think Karma best role is probably support, in my opinion, but I do still think Karma is pretty good in mid. Now the rest are just solid picks. Ahri, Annie, Seraphine, and Brand, all just pretty okay. I just realized I missed out Veigar. Let's just quickly correct that mistake. So Veigar, also just an okay pick. Fizz, Morgana, and Lux not doing the best at the moment, but still not as bad as like Kayle and Aurelion Sol. So yeah, now we're gonna talk about ADCs. So ADCs, there has been a huge change, and there is a huge S tier, as you guys can see. So now ADCs, obviously, the two huge changes is Solari Chargeblade getting nerfed and Stormraizer getting buffed. So now we are sort of having a Stormraizer meta. Now, despite that, I still think Kai'Sa is the best ADC, even though she doesn't actually build Stormraizer. And for me personally, I never actually built Solari Chargeblade on Kai'Sa. I mostly built Runan's Hurricane. So to me, there isn't really too much of a change. And I think that now with the Chargeblade nerf, everybody's going to be building Runan's Hurricane on Kai'Sa again now. So I do think Kai'Sa is still very strong, still the best. Varus is still very strong as well. Now you can see the huge change here is that Caitlyn, Xayah, Jhin, and Jinx are all Stormraizer users, and they're now all really good. So basically, this item has pushed the four of them to just be really good. And of course, Jhin in combination with his buffs as well. So Caitlyn, pretty much the standard build now is like Stormraizer and IE, and then you go for one more energized item into like a Moral Reminder and a GA or another energized item. So because of that, the four of them have this like standard build, and they're all just pretty good because of the items in the meta at the moment. So Lucian, although although the Chargeblade did get nerfed, I still go for the Chargeblade kind of build on Lucian. I still think he's pretty solid despite the nerfs. But the interesting thing is I have seen a couple of strange builds on Lucian, like with Stormraizer and with like Divine Sunderer. I'm not too sure about the Divine Sunderer one, but the Stormraizer one might actually make sense because of how good the item is at the moment. So I don't know, I'll have to see about it and see if we can make a video on that. So Draven did get a little bit weaker because of the fact that number one, he doesn't build Stormraizer, and number two, his Chargeblade did get nerfed. Now he could opt into a Stormraizer later on or earlier on, but he has to trade off things for that. So I don't think Draven is as good as previous patch, but I still think he's really good. So we're going to talk about the AP options later on, but Tristana I do think is very strong. Now Tristana video incoming, because of course of the Stormraizer, but I just don't think she's as good as the top 4 Stormraizer users, of course that being Xayah, Caitlyn, Jhin, and Jinx. So Vayne indirectly got nerfed as well because she cannot build Stormraizer, and because Chargeblade got nerfed. So I do think she's very significantly weaker than in previous patches, so Vayne drops down quite a bit. And same goes for Ezreal, who can't build Stormraizer, and he can actually build Divine Sunderer if the match calls for it, which we'll probably make a video on eventually. But at the moment, Ezreal not in the best of spots, not because he got weaker, but just because everybody got stronger. Now MF is still where she always is, just standard good in a teamfight comp. Akshan just okay. And Senna, of course, farming Senna is the weakest, and Ashe is now pretty much just undisputedly the worst ADC because she can't really build, you know, Stormraizer and all that. I mean, she can, but don't really see that happening, I think. So now AP options, Corki and Ziggs, Orianna, and Karma are pretty much the best. I'm going to be doing a video on Karma APC really soon, and Karma being an APC is really strong. Veigar and Brand just the two worser AP options. Now finally we're going to talk about the supports. Alrighty, so I think at the moment Thresh is pretty much the best support. He can pretty much do everything except like heal your allies. He can catch people out, flay people away, flay people towards, activate the bot for area control, lantern people in, you lantern people out, etc, etc. We all know how good Thresh is. Yuumi in like dual Q and above is really good because you can attach to like the person that you know and they can carry the game for you. Karma, really overtuned champion at the moment, and I think support is her best role because when you build Flowing Water first and get that like little bit of AP, she still does a lot of damage while still giving like huge shields and really good supportive capabilities. Now Nami and Lulu are pretty much worser like versions of like Yuumi and Karma in a sense that they are still really good, but they just aren't as good as the two of them. So yeah, but they still are S+ tier in my opinion. Now Rakan is pretty much the best instant engage support. Thresh is a little bit more of like a catcher kind of support, not really like full on engage, but Braum is like the best full on engage support. Braum and Janna still are a little bit more niche, but still are really good. Like Braum for blocking projectiles, like, you know, Seraphine ult, or like, you know, a Jinx rocket, that kind of thing, or Ezreal in general. And really good for disengaging is Janna. Like for example, against like a Leona, a Lee Sin, a Kali, that kind of thing, Janna is really good. And then we have a lot of tank engage supports, Leona, Alistar, and Galio. Now Galio's nerfs did they did nerf the damage on his ultimate for support Galio, but I still think he's really strong. He still has a lot of CC, he's still really tanky, so it doesn't really affect him too much. Now Shen also can be played as support, and I've tried it out, but it's just simply alright. It's not really good, but not really bad either. Then we have like the AP building supports of Seraphine, Lux, and Morgana. Morgana is still pretty good, especially since Caitlyn is good now, and Lux and Seraphine are still alright as well, especially with the huge teamfight ultimate of Seraphine. And Soraka, I still feel is pretty good with all her healing, so I still think she hangs on to the bottom of A tier. And I have actually seen the new Blitzcrank with the but the double cast of W. I still think that he is good in a certain aspect if you're good at him, but I still don't think he's very good as a support. Sona, just way too weak early game to survive to the late game. And the C tier supports just don't really pick it. Like Pantheon only can engage, and it's way too predictable, and he's just really bad. So yeah, that's about it for the patch 3.1 tier list, and look forward to like the 4 upcoming videos on the like gameplays, updated complete guides, commentary guides, etc. So thank you guys for watching the video, and goodbye.